Egypt now eyes underground trains to beat Cairo's traffic chaos. Another trading week begins, and that means it's time for Global Business as we bring you up to speed with the latest developments on the constantly changing business landscape here in the continent. From Nairobi to Johannesburg, from Cairo to Lagos, we'll be bringing you the headlines that are making news tonight. This is Global Business. I am Penina Karibe, live from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. It is 9 p.m. here in East Africa. Also lined up this half hour, striking workers in South Africa to vote on whether to continue with the week-long wild castor page at Northern Platinum. And government bows to pressure and cuts fuel prices by 10% in Nigeria. Let's begin in South Africa, where the National Union of Mine Workers is meeting with Northern Platinum in a bid to end a strike at the company's biggest mine, which started last week. About 5,000 members of NUM downed tools at the company's Zonderend mine, demanding the removal of Chief Executive Paul Dan. They are accusing Dan of alleged unfair hiring and firing practices. Northern shut operations at the mine, which produces 65% of its output on Friday, due to what it called rising levels of intimidation against non-striking workers and assaults related to the stoppage. The platinum industry is still recovering from a 5-month strike last year by AMCU Union that hit Anglo-American Platinum, Impala Platinum and Lonmin, the world's top producers of the precious metal. Well, let's now get the latest on this story. We're joined live from Johannesburg by Angelo Kupla. He's been covering the industrial action at Northern Platinum. So, Angelo, what are the latest resolutions from the miners' meeting?
Well, we know that the meeting ended a short while ago, but the miners haven't issued any kind of a statement or provided any kind of an update. The company, however, did confirm to me a little while ago that the status quo remains. In other words, the strike continues. It's a wildcat strike, and staff continue to lose around $200,000 a day in wages and benefits, while the mine loses around 1,000 ounces or about $1 million a day. So the status quo remains. There's no change. We're waiting now for the mine union to get back to us. Penina?
And Angelo, aside from the dispute over hiring and firing practices at the mine, are there any other points of disagreement between the two sides?
In fact, there are. According to the National Union of Mine Workers, it appears that there's a lack of face-to-face communication between the union and the local mine management. NUM says they've actually had to resort to communication with management via email. We haven't been able to get any confirmation, obviously, from management themselves. They're saying, that is the union, are saying that face-to-face meetings to deal with and resolve issues simply doesn't happen. The company, on the other hand, has gone and appointed a group of media liaison experts to deal with us in the media, but that's to give us a flow of content in terms of what's happening there, but the same is not being applied to the union. One of the issues that was raised, and it's exactly the same thing that happened last year at the same mine, where the union said they couldn't actually negotiate or have any kind of a conversation with local management, and that's why they were trying to talk to management at head office in Johannesburg. And also bear in mind that a year ago to today almost, in fact tomorrow, was when their 7-week strike at this particular mine had been resolved, Penina. So it looks like history is repeating itself.
Indeed, Angelo, but AMCU members have kept out of this strike so far. Why is that?
Well, bottom line here is that AMCU isn't the majority mine at the union at this mine. The NUM is, and AMCU doesn't have the right or a legal right to call a strike. The NUM does, but in this instance, they've got a wildcat strike underway. It was declared illegal last week by the Labour Court, so they're operating in an illegal environment. And if AMCU were in fact to go on strike because they might feel as strongly as the NUM does, it's unlikely that they'll do that because, as you know, the NUM and AMCU remain bitter rivals.
Exactly. Let's talk about that, Angelo. This rivalry between AMCU and NUM playing into this strike, how exactly is that happening?
Well, at the moment, neither AMCU or the NUM are saying that much. They're being pretty quiet. Besides the fact that AMCU are saying that there has been some intimidation, the NUM are saying that there's nothing. But management have stepped in, and over the weekend they pulled all of the AMCU members that are staying in the hostels out to avoid any kind of conflict or clash between the two groups. But the strike does continue. Incidentally, Panina, tomorrow Stats SA releases their quarterly mining production and sales data. And as you mentioned earlier, there was that 5-month strike last year. And the new Stats SA data is likely to show that production levels are back to normal rates. You must also remember that this northern mine is the 4th largest producer. So it's not a big player in terms of the other 3. And it's unlikely that this week or so of lost production is going to have a major impact.
All right, Angela, thanks very much for this insights. Angela Coppola live for us in Johannesburg. Now, Japanese Prime Minister has pledged about $200 million in non-military assistance for countries battling the terror group Islamic State. Shinzo Abe made the pledge in Cairo, Egypt, where he met Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Abe also said that Japan will help Egypt with some $360 million in loans for airport and power grid projects. His counterpart el-Sisi requested more Japanese to invest and tour the country in order to bolster Egypt's economy that is on the recovery path after 3 years of political unrest. Abe said it was the beginning of a new era in Japanese-Egyptian relations.
Once again, greetings to you and welcome to Egypt. Please allow me to call for 2 things. The first is a request that you start investing in Egypt. The second call is for the Japanese people to start visiting Egypt. Egypt is safe and stable and is waiting for the Japanese people to be tourists in Egypt.
And now a new page is turned in our relations with Egypt, the new Egypt, through my meeting with His Excellency. We are adamant on exerting our utmost efforts for the relationship between Japan and Egypt to develop.
All right, so let's have a quick look at the markets now. And all the main bourses ended in the green Monday. The Nigerian all share gaining almost 3%. Now, the Nigerian bourse is seeking to attract companies from outside Africa's biggest economy to sell shares, as slumping oil prices weigh on local businesses. The CEO says they're planning to widen their geography so that they increase listings and support companies looking to raise capital in other countries. Coming up on Global Biz, Kenya seeks help from IMF to cushion its economy from shocks as key industries post dismal performance. And Egypt now eyes underground trains to beat Cairo's traffic chaos.
Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
Food security is a major challenge for most African nations, yet agriculture is a backbone of these economies. But with technologies like hydroponics, there is hope of food availability all year round.
Welcome back to Global Business. Let's head to Nigeria now, which has announced a 10% cut in local pump price of petrol following the continued fall in global oil prices. A litre of fuel now sells for 87 naira, which is around 51 US cents. Analysts say the new pricing template now effectively wipes off a controversial government subsidy on petrol. But what happens when global oil prices begin to pick up? CCTV's Deji Badmas tells us more.
For quite some time, the government has come under intense pressure, especially from labor unions, to reduce the domestic pump price of oil, following the sustained fall in global crude prices. Domestic pump prices are usually not dictated by global crude prices in Nigeria. The government subsidizes domestic consumption of petrol. But with Nigeria's Brent crude now falling to $49 per barrel, the subsidies have now been completely eroded, leaving the government with no choice than to cut down the price of fuel. Across the country, people are happy with the new price regime.
It has not really effects on the taxi price and all that. But I must have to confess, it's quite commendable.
It's a very welcome development. It's a good thing. Whatever their intention is, at least, is something good. Welcome it.
The current situation now lays to rest the controversial issue of subsidy on petrol. Attempts by the government to remove it in the past had always been resisted. It's not certain whether the government would reintroduce the subsidy when global oil prices begin to climb. But this energy economist says subsidy will return when prices go up.
Right now, what you don't have, you can't give. So what you are importing and you are subject to the source price, in those countries of origin. Okay, but it's a different scenario if your own refineries are working at full stream and now you are now subsidizing with a little bit of import. Until we get to that level where we import to the minimal level or we don't import at all, I might not be comfortable to say subsidy has been wiped out. It will rear its ugly head again.
The fall in global oil prices poses some kind of paradox for Nigeria. Most Nigerians on the street pray prices continue to fall so that domestic pump prices will continue to go down. But on the other hand, the government is praying fervently that crude prices go up to enable it generate badly needed revenue. It's indeed a paradox with consequences on both sides. Deji Badmo, CCTV, Lagos, Nigeria.
All right, so let's come to Kenya. And East Africa's biggest economy has asked the International Monetary Fund for a precautionary loan of about $750 million. This is to help it deal with any future shocks to the economy. IMF's resident representative, Armando Morales, says the request is up for consideration by the fund's board. The shilling weakened gradually last year after a series of terror attacks scared off tourists, resulting to a dip in foreign exchange inflows. It is down 1.22% this year, mainly due to a firmer dollar. If the insurance-type loan is granted by the fund, it will run for a year with the option for renewal. IMF loans to Kenya are usually used to shore up the central bank's foreign exchange reserves, mainly to cushion the economy from any shocks. Now, over the last 6 months, the price of fuel and electricity in Kenya have fallen by double digits. With an extra 280 megawatts of geothermal power plants now online, the fuel cost charge, an element of power prices used to pay for electricity generated from diesel power plants, has fallen by 65%. Combined with the decline in the cost of fuel, electricity cost for consumers has fallen by between 24% and 35%. Now, Kenya is making a significant bet on geothermal power with an estimated 7 gigawatts of untapped potential generation capacity, and it plans to add at least 5 GW of new generation capacity in the next 3 years. So energy costs are a big determinant of cost and inflation in East Africa's biggest economy. Let's get a wider perspective on this now with Cyprian Nyakundi. He's a financial analyst at Kenya's Energy Regulatory Commission. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
We did see a surge in geothermal power's share of total generation late last year. What other power plants are due to come online, save, of course, for the 150 megawatts of wind in Kipeto and elsewhere?
Thank you, Penina. For the current year, we expect to have about 6 power plants. The first power plant is Kindango Power, which will inject 60 megawatts of wind. And we expect that to be on board by August 2015. We have 3 IPPs who have already been awarded contracts to do 107 megawatts of geothermal. The first one being Sosian, which will do 35 megawatts of power in Menengai. The next one is Quantum. Quantum will do 37 megawatts of geothermal also in Menengai. And the last one is Omat, which will do 35 megawatts of geothermal in Menengai as well. And that will estimated to be commissioned by November 2015. We also expect to have 50 megawatts from All Power 4, which is already existing in the country, already generating about 110 megawatts.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at Kenya Power, which is of course Kenya's main distribution and transmission and distribution firm, and it's supposed to, cut or limit its combined system losses to I think a maximum of 16.6%. Now, given the capacity and the rate at which that capacity is being added to the grid, do you think it can hit that goal?
Yes, it can, because in the revenue requirements for Kenya Power, we look at everything in global perspective. We know the generation that is coming on board in the next 2-3 years, and based on that, we provide enough revenue to KPLC to ensure that they have a healthy balance sheet so that they can attract lenders, so that they can be able to borrow money to be able to invest in transmission and distribution. We also have Ketraco, which is a government fully owned institution, which is heavily investing in transmission, and the aim is to ensure that before this generation comes on board, the grid is already there, the line is already there, so that we are able to evacuate this power. So the target is achievable.
Right.
Yep.
All right, so let's look now at the global falling prices. And there's been plenty of criticism here in Kenya, online, offline, about the rate at which the retail prices here in Kenya are falling. And for most Kenyans, they don't really reflect what's happening on the global scale. Could you take us through the process here in Kenya? What determines the prices?
Ideally, the prices we have at the pump prices today are reflective of international prices. The only difference is that if the international prices are announced today, they normally announce the crude prices. We normally import our crude and our refined products from the Gulf Arabian region. And once the prices are announced, it takes a while for that product to be imported to Kenya. The process is that once we put the tenders through the Ministry of Energy, we then source that product from the Arabian countries, and it takes about 30 to 45 days for that product to land in Kenya. So what we are selling at the pump stations today is a refined product that was received this month, but based on the prices that were announced last month. So the benefit of the current crude prices or current low prices that were announced recently will be felt next month in the coming bills.
Well, not some system that I guess for many Kenyans, they don't feel it works as promptly maybe as they would love to. But let's look at Tullow Oil. It's confirmed its commitment in its exploration and appraisal work here in Kenya. Are we seeing similar commitment from other firms in the country?
Yes, we have about 20 oil companies who are already on the ground, been awarded contracts, and they are doing exploration. So there is really, there's massive interest in exploration. A few companies that may have left, like Apache and the rest, who drilled and probably found some dry wells and left. But we have quite a number of them that are still running today.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Cyprian Nyakundi, we appreciate your insights tonight. Thanks very much for coming to studio.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so let's head down south now. Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, has been marred by poor service delivery, mainly due to funding constraints. In a bid to revamp operations, the government says it will shut down businesses that are failing to renew licenses.
The Harare City Council aims to close illegal, unlicensed and defaulting shop operators in order to curb revenue losses due to non-renewal of licenses. The move aims to clean up the city and ensure that businesses are operating within the confines of the law.
It's a way of making every business a legal entity when it operates in the city. You will also appreciate, as residents of Harare, that if businesses pay, that money is used in service delivery. So the thrust for 2015 is service delivery, and we need to deliver the services to the people. So we can't let the money that is supposed to come to council for service delivery lie outside there.
With over 7,000 businesses in the city, the council could be generating millions of revenue annually to improve service delivery. But most business operators failed to meet the December 31st license renewal deadline.
Those who have not paid their licenses for 2015, the shops, the businesses are being closed because we want everybody to operate legally in Harare.
The council deployed inspectorate teams around the country to check compliance. The teams comprise of environment inspectors, health officers, municipality police officers and the Zimbabwe Republic Police. Last year, the council failed to meet its annual revenue target of $276 million, collecting only $138 million. The city was forced to revise down its target to $151 million, resulting in service delivery challenges. Wazir Khamsin, CCTV.
The Egyptian government is expanding its operations in its underground network. It decided to cut its 6 metro lines plan by 13 years, aiming to complete it in 2022. To reach this goal, it started 2015 by working for the first time on 3 phases simultaneously. Adel Mahrui reports on what's hot tonight.
Cairo's traffic is one of the worst in the world. According to the government statistics, the average speed during rush hours could reach 12 kilometers an hour. The only escape is to go underneath these streets and take the metro.
The streets are crowded and you waste a lot of time. You spend all day commuting. All bus stops are packed and you wait for so long for buses and you might not even find enough room to get on board. It could take up more than 4 hours to reach your destination.
Around 18 million live in the capital now. By 2025, it'll be 25 million. So traffic is expected to become even worse. And Egypt is rushing to complete its plan of 6 metro lines. Only 2 are currently fully functional.
احنا شايفين المشكلة في الشارع وحسنها قوي.
We feel the problems in the streets. That's why we decided to finish all 6 lines very quickly. Our original plan was to finish in 2035. Now we hope to finish in 2022.
After working on 1 phase at a time, in 2015 Egypt began operation in 3 phases. It has signed a $3 billion electric train deal with China to connect new cities on the outskirts of Greater Cairo. Both countries are currently negotiating to construct Line 5 and 6 of the metro.
مشاركة الجانب الصيني حقيقي معانا قد إيه؟
China's cooperation with the authority is huge. The electric train is already a signed contract. We are now negotiating over the 5th and 6th metro lines. We still do not know if we'll reach a deal yet. They are optimistic to work with us. We might also cooperate in creating trains and vehicle tunnels that will pass under the new Suez Canal.
طموحين إن هم يشتغلوا معانا في الخط الخامس والسادس للمترو.
But this expansion would increase pressure on the budget deficit and the 88% subsidy of ticket prices the government pays. So lately it's been studying to increase ticket prices.
Yes, they should improve the service, but if they intend to increase the fare, it should be within the reach of the poor, so they can make it £1.25 or £1.50. All sorts of people use the metro. Students, workers, everyone should be able to afford it.
A fair price would be around £9, an impossible number for most Egyptians. So the government has to choose either to lift the subsidy or take loans to fund the expected $14 billion needed to complete the national underground network. The current underground network serves about 3.5 million passengers a day. After the completion of the 3rd line alone, this number is expected to double. And by completing the entire national network, Egypt hopes that it will reach 17 million passengers a day. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
A quick check at some commodity prices, and Brent crude oil prices fell below $50 a barrel Monday after the global economic outlook darkened and Iraq announced record oil production. Oil prices have dropped by more than half since last June as output around the world soared while demand growth slowed. Although the International Energy Agency said last week a reversal in the trend was possible this year, it added that prices may fall further before rising. And coming up, small and upcoming businessmen in South Africa get a rare boost from India. An MOU signed in Johannesburg between the Black Business Council and the National Small Industries Chamber of India should signal a further strengthening of trade relations between the two countries. Angela Kopla has the details of this boost to small businessmen in South Africa on Grassroots tonight.
The NSIC has been working in South Africa for several years now, focused mainly in KwaZulu-Natal, due partially to the large Indian community that is based in the province. While details of the MOU are yet to be fleshed out, the signing ceremony is seen as an expansion of that presence. The BBC are using a tried and tested system that has worked in India, creating employment for more than 60 million people there.
Through NSIC, we developed the entrepreneur and develop also job seeker who is very much anxious to take some job, and through these incubation centers, all these things are being done.
It is important because now with this program we are going to create entrepreneurs, not going to be just a lip service.
That's why I'm so happy to see BBC and the NSIC signing this MOU that will be able to transfer skills and make sure that we can have better training in terms of our entrepreneurship and make sure that we can create jobs. Because in South Africa, we've got many job seekers and less entrepreneurs. And that's what we are trying to turn around as a country and make sure that we can have the economic transformation and radical transformation. You only do that when you have skills.
It's common cause that small and medium enterprises are employment generators and creators. With this new MOU and the tried and tested system that is being brought into the country, it's sure to make a difference to the employment levels here, provided it can be adapted if necessary. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Johannesburg.
Let's take a quick look at the currencies now. Nigeria's naira hit record lows against the dollar Monday before central bank decisions that analysts say may include the second currency devaluation in 2 months for Africa's top oil producer. Now, the naira, which has been hammered by the collapse in oil prices, fell 3.6% to a record low of 191.50 before recovering some ground after the central bank, 2 domestic banks and an energy firm sold dollars. However, it still booked its weakest close on record at 187.50 to the dollar, suggesting commercial banks in Africa's biggest economy think the central bank may opt for a repeat on Tuesday of its November devaluation. Well, just before we go, here's what is coming up on Global Business tomorrow. The IMF presents an update on the economic outlook and impact of low oil prices for the Middle East and Central Asia. We shall be in Washington and Cairo with the latest. And South Africa implements a quota cut on West Coast rock lobster for the 2014-2015 fishing season. The move is largely as a result of overfishing and poaching, which has seen the species' total biomass numbers dwindle to near extinction levels. And that's it for this edition of Global Business. Do send your feedback to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. You can visit our Facebook page, CCTV Africa, and you can also stay in touch with Global Business on Twitter using the handle at CCTV News Africa. I am Penina Karibe. Thank you for watching.